Warm greetings everybody. I am Dr. Pavandeep Kaur from Khalsa College of Law, Amritsar. Welcome to all to today's discussion. The topic of our today's module is the Indian Independence Act 1947. The present module will make the students acquainted with the timeline of the Indian Independence Act 1947, Clement Attlee's announcement, the 3rd June plan, Dickey Bird plan, important features of the Indian Independence Act 1947, impact of Indian Independence Act 1947, and the most unique feature, that is after effects of the Indian Independence Act 1947. So friends, I would like to start today's talk with brief introduction of the Indian Independence Act 1947. In 1947, the Indian Independence Act was approved. The legislation established two new sovereign nations, India and Pakistan. Pakistan was divided into two parts, Pakistan and East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. The provinces of Bengal and Punjab were divided between the two new countries. These dominions divided the Muslims, Hindu and Sikh populations, resulting in the largest non-war or famine-related forced migration in history. The Act abolished the usage of the title Emperor of India for the British Crown and terminated all previous treaties with the princely kingdoms. Lord Mountbatten remained the Governor-General of India and Jawaharlal Nehru was chosen as the first Prime Minister. Meanwhile, Muhammad Ali Jinnah was appointed as the Governor-General of Pakistan and Liaquat Ali Khan was appointed as the Prime Minister. When the major political parties agreed on the entire partition plan, the House of Commons was ready to hear the Independence Bill, which was presented on 4th July 1947. India's fight against colonialism and imperialism came to a head with this. Because the Act called for division of India and the creation of an independent state of Pakistan, it was also the triumph of communal forces in our national struggle. Additionally, it was a success for those who adhered the divide and rule and divide and quit strategies. The Act made it clear that ruling party could effectively veto the will and desires of the even a strong majority via purposeful maneuvering and cooperation of a minority under one pretext or another. In no way did the Act of 1947 constitute a constitution, nor did it even broadly outline one. However, it was an act that gave the British government the ability to leave India. The Indian Independence Act of 1947 was passed by the British Parliament and was approved by the monarch on July 18, 1947. India became independent after the Royal Proclamation of Consent. As of August 15, 1947, the appointment date under the Government of India Act of 1935, both India and Pakistan would be independent countries according to the Act. It was up to the founding assemblies of both dominions to decide which constitution to draft and accept. The Indian Independence Act of 1947 was among the laws that the Constituent Assembly had complete authority to annul under the 18th July 1947 Act. A committee worked on the Indian Constitution from August 15, 1947 to January 26 and 1950. At the time, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was then the law minister, oversaw the drafting committee directly. Friends, now I would like to put light upon the timeline of the Indian Independence Act 1947. The British Parliament passed the Indian Independence Act of 1947, which divided India into the sovereign nation of India and Pakistan. The legislation was created by Clement Attlee's Labour administration. It was based on the Mountbatten Plan, also known as 3rd June Plan, which was created after the Viceroy Lord Mountbatten's suggestions were accepted by the leaders of Indian National Congress and Muslim League. What is the Attlee's announcement? Clement Attlee, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, announced on 20th February 1947 that the British government would grant full self-government to British India by 30th June 1948 at the latest. The future of the princely states would be decided after the date of final transfer is decided. Further, 3rd June Plan. The 3rd June 1947 plan was also known as Mountbatten Plan. The British government proposed a plan announced on 3rd June 1947 that included following principles. The first one, the principle of the partition of British India was accepted by the British government. Successors governments would be given dominion status, autonomy and sovereignty to both countries. They can make their own constitution. Princely states were given the right to join either India or Pakistan based on two major factors, geographical contiguity and the people's wishes. The next one is Dickey-Bird Plan. In May 1947, Mountbatten came up with a plan under which he proposed the provinces to be declared independent successor states and then be allowed to choose whether to join the Constituent Assembly or not. This plan was called the Dickey-Bird Plan. Lord Mountbatten travelled to India with the express purpose of overseeing the transfer of power to Indians. On the issue of partition, however, the Indian National Congress and the League could not come to an understanding. Nehru disagreed with Mountbatten's initial proposal known as Dickey-Bird Plan. The provinces would be declared independent and given the option to join or not to join the Constituent Assembly. According to this plan, Nehru disagreed with this because he believed it would cause the nation to become more divided. The 3rd June Plan, which was approved by all parties, was the final strategy developed by the Mountbatten. The Indian National Congress, which opposed any form of national division, eventually came to embrace it as a necessary process. According to this proposal, India would be divided into Pakistan and India. The areas that would become part of Pakistan would not be covered by the constitution draft by the Constituent Assembly of India. The choice of a unique Constituent Assembly would subsequently be made by these provinces. The Punjab and Bengal legislative assemblies approved the division which separated these territories between the two dominions along religious lines. Since the assembly was given the option of joining or not joining the Indian Constituent Assembly, it chose to ally with Pakistan. A referendum was to be held in Sylhet and the northwestern frontier provinces to determine which country they would join. The Constituent Assembly of new countries would be granted full legislative authority. The act voted to grant India and Pakistan independence beginning on 15th August 1947. The Boundary Commission would draw the new borders of the dominions. It was time for British rule over the princely states to cease. These nations had the option of remaining independent or joining either Pakistan or India. More than 560 states decided to join India. The title Emperor of India would no longer be used by the British sovereign. The various governor-generals would serve as the head of state until the new Dominion's constitution took effect, and they would continue to ratify laws made by the Constituent Assemblies in the name of the king, which would not apply to the regions that would from Pakistan. This act received the royal assent on 18th July 1947 and entered into force. Pakistan became independent on 14th August and India on 15th August 1947. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was appointed Pakistan's Governor General and Lord Mountbatten became India's. Dear friends, it is pertinent to discuss the important features of the Indian Independence Act 1947. The following are the salient features of this act. The Indian Independence Act of 1947 provided for the creation of two independent dominions of India and Pakistan from 15th August 1947. It defined the territories of two new dominions and made possible the adjustment of existing boundaries and the accession of other boundaries by consent. It provided for the partition of Bengal, Punjab and Assam after ascertaining the wishes of their inhabitants. The final fixation of the boundaries was to be done by the Boundary Commission. The dominion of Pakistan was to have two wings, East Pakistan and West Pakistan. East Pakistan comprised East Bengal and Sylhet district, which was taken out Assam. West Pakistan included the northwest frontier province of Pakistan, West Punjab, Sindh and Balochistan. Either of the two dominions was to have a Governor-General appointed by King for the government of dominions. The act also provided that same person could be appointed Governor-General of both the dominions. Further, the legislature of each of the dominions is free to make laws for that dominion, including laws having extraterritorial operation. No act of British Parliament passed on or after 15th August 1947 was to extend to either of the dominions. The suzerainty of British government over the Indian states lapsed, and with it all treaties and agreements between His Majesty and the rules of Indian states also came to an end. The Indian states would become independent in their political relation with the governments of the new dominions. The assent of the Parliament was given for the omission of royal styles and titles like Emperor of India. The power of the legislature of the dominion would be exercisable in the first instance by the Constituent Assembly of that dominion. Further, dominion and provinces and other parts thereof would be governed by the Government of India Act 1935 for the interim period. The provisions requiring the Governor-General or any other governor to act in his discretion or exercise his judgment would cease to have effect as of 15th August 1947. The Governor-General was, however, invested with plenary powers until March 1948 to issue orders for the effective implementation of Indian Independence Act 1947 and the division of the assets between two dominions, and to adopt or modify the Government of India Act 1935 and to remove any difficulties that might arise during the transitional period. The Act of 1947 provided for the abolition of the office of Secretary of State for India and his advisors. The two dominions were given the freedom to join or not to join the Commonwealth. The members of the civil services and the judges of Federal Court and High Courts appointed before 15th August 1947 would continue to serve in either of two dominions and would be entitled to receive all facilities in respect of their remuneration, leave, term, pension, etc., as they enjoyed before. As a result, the long British rule came to an end and India and Pakistan became two independent sovereign states. According to Lord Samuel, who was speaking about the peaceful transition of power, it is an event unparalleled in history, a pact of peace with our word. On the orderly and graceful transfer of power, Rajendra Prasad, President of Indian Constituent Assembly, made the following memorable remarks as, "Let us gracefully acknowledge that while our achievement is in no small measure due to our sacrifices, it is also the result of world forces and events. Last but not least, It is the culmination and fulfillment of the political traditions and democratic ideas of the British race. The period of dominion ends today, and moving forward, relations with the British will be based on equality and mutual goodwill. Dear learners, you would love to know that Indian Independence Act of 1947 modified the Assembly's status. The Assembly was elevated to status of completely sovereign body capable of drafting any constitution it desired. The legislation gave the Assembly the authority to repeal or amend any law concerning India passed by the British Parliament. The Assembly was likewise elevated to the status of a legislative body. In other words, the Assembly was charged with two distinct tasks: drafting a constitution for free India and adopting general legislation for the country. These two activities were supposed to be completed gradually. As a result, the Assembly became the first parliament of independent India. Dr. Rajinder Prasad presided over the constituent body, with G.V. Malvankar presided over the legislative body of the Assembly. These two duties were carried out until November 26, 1949, when the process of drafting the constitution was completed. Members of the Muslim League from areas included in Pakistan resigned from the Indian Constituent Assembly. As a result, the Assembly's overall strength fell to 299 as opposed to the 389 originally set in 1946 under the Cabinet Mission Plan. The Indian provinces, previously British provinces, strength was lowered from 296 to 229 and the princely states from 93 to 70. Friends, further, I would like to discuss the impact of Indian Independence Act 1947. The Indian Independence Act of 1947 had a major impact on constitutional development. It was the fulfillment of the British mission to use Attlee's phrase in India and the culmination of a long series of events. Similarly, Lord Samuel referred to the law as a peace treaty without conflict in the House of Lords. The passage of this act was praised by even the Indian authorities. For instance, Dr. Rajinder Prasad stated that the British Empire's control over India has to come an end today, and that we will continue to maintain a relationship with British based on equality, goodwill and mutual understanding. The legislation signaled the start of a new era of freedom in India, but many individuals and leaders were not happy with it. In Pakistan, August 14 was a day of grief for Hindus and Sikhs, as noted by Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. The unity of the states in the Indian nation was seriously threatened by the end of British control over the Indian states, whether they were admitted to the Dominion or continued to be independent. Despite these flaws, it is indisputable that Indian Independence Act of 1947 signaled the beginning of a free India and put an end to British control in that country. Dear friends, the Indian Independence Act was abolished by Article 395 of the Constitution of India. The Indian Independence Act was among the acts of parliament that could be repealed by either province under the legislation. Eventually, the Indian Independence Act of 1947 was nullified by India and Pakistan after enacting their respective constitutions. The Indian Independence Act of 1947 was essentially repealed by Article 395 of the Indian Constitution and Article 221 of the Pakistan's Constitution. India became a republic and lost its position as a dominion after the Indian Constitution was adopted. It is to be noted that the Act has not been repealed in United Kingdom, where it is still has an effect, although some sections of it have been repealed. Dear friends, The most unique feature of this act was after effects of Indian Independence Act 1947. Let's have a look. There was a great uncertainty in the minds of the people. To everyone's surprise, the transfer of power was advanced by 1 month. Suddenly, all hell broke out. Before people could make up their minds, violence had erupted and engulfed the whole region. People who had lived side by side for centuries were bloodthirsty for each other. There were mass murders, rapes, looting, and kidnappings. Friends, neighbors, and brothers were made to kill each other. This was the most tragic, artificially perpetrated genocide in human history, and Lord Mountbatten was the person in charge. More than 14 million people were displaced and close to 2 million people died or went missing during the partition of India. It was the parting gift by the British Empire to the people of India. This was more tragic than the Holocaust and world wars, but it is never taught in world history. Friends, neighbors, and brothers were made to kill each other. Violence erupts. There was much violence, and many Muslims from that what would become India fled to Pakistan, and Hindus and Sikhs from what would become Pakistan fled to India. Also, many people left behind all their possessions and property to avoid the violence and flee to their new country. Further, early withdrawal resulted in more problems. The breakneck speed of events under Mountbatten caused anomalies in arranging the details of partition because there was no transitional institutional structure within which partition problems could be tackled. Mountbatten had hoped to be the common Governor General of India and Pakistan, thus providing the necessary link, but Jinnah wanted the position for himself in Pakistan. There was a delay in announcing the Boundary Commission Award under Radcliffe. Though the award was ready by 12th August 1947, Mountbatten decided to make it public after 15th August so that the British could escape all responsibilities for disturbance. Issues related to states integration. During 1946 and 47, there was a new upsurge of the state people's movement demanding political rights and elective representation in the Constituent Assembly. So, the act which gave a choice for princely states to join either of the union had to be subjugated later. This further demanded military action from Indian dominion to ensure they acceded to the Indian Union. Next, Congress accepted partition because only an immediate transfer of power could forestall the spread of direct action and communal violence. The virtual collapse of the interim government also made the notion of Pakistan appear unavoidable. The partition plan ruled out independence for princely states, which could have been a greater danger to Indian unity as it would have meant the balkanization of the country. And next one is grand exit of the British Empire. The British Empire left a lasting scar and a hostility that never vanished, even after a century. A civil war was sparked by the 200 years of anti-incumbency and animosity toward the British, which were forgotten. There was already enough animosity between local population of Pakistan and India. By maintaining separate forces, this animosity between two nations was further institutionalized. The empire had a great escape strategy that would have left no evidence of crime and preserved their honor. Numerous geopolitical goals were accomplished. The game had a futuristic setting as well. Britain has been able to keep cordial ties with both India and Pakistan by presenting an outwardly charitable image. At the same time, South Asian hoarders of black money ex-dictators, murderers and con artists continued to immigrate to Britain. Dear friends, I would like to conclude by saying that Indian Independence Act 1947 was the last act formulated by the British Parliament for India. Its main purpose was to properly transfer the powers to British government over India. It became an act with the approval of the British Parliament on 18th July 1947. The constitutional development and Indian national movement culminated by this act. The enactment of Indian Independence Act of 1947 was a watershed movement in the country's constitutional history. The law signaled the start of new period of freedom in India, although many Indians were dissatisfied with it. Despite these flaws, there can be no doubt that Act brought an end to British rule in India. So friends, with this we will end today's discussion. We'll see you in the next module. Thank you very much.